excited that you're here on our podcast, and we just want to get right to the questions. But for we have a lot of listeners, and we have listeners from all walks of life, and some of them have access to Netflix, and many of them don't. So for those of listeners who may not have heard of Aleeza Ben Shalom, can you just introduce yourself and what you do?
Yes, I'm Aleeza Ben Shalom. I work as a professional matchmaker and dating and relationship coach. I work with singles of all ages, all stages, all backgrounds in all locations, from 18, and the oldest person was 89, completely secular, to so religious that a guy wouldn't do a Zoom call. He preferred to do a call so that we weren't face to face, and everything in between.
Okay, great. So Rabbi Kahn really is a professional interviewer, so I'm going to let him open things up because you kind of know how to ask the questions, and then I'll jump in with mine afterwards.
Well, first of all, it's nice for you to say, Talli, and Aleeza, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. I know we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to jump right in with a question I found interesting. I heard on the show, which I enjoy, that you have a no touching for the first 5 days. I remember you spoke to someone about that, no touching for the first 5 days, and then you explain how that's directly related to the idea of shomer negia, the idea that couples are not supposed to touch halachically in the Jewish tradition before they get married. So I'm curious how you came up with this idea of 5 dates specifically, meaning from a halachic perspective, and I realize you're not presenting halacha there, that's not your goal, but from a halachic perspective, they can't touch no matter how many dates they're on until they get married. And from a non-halachic perspective, they may say, maybe I should touch after the second date or on the first date or after the 20th date. So I'm curious how you came up with that particular concept, with the understanding, of course, that I know you're not trying to say that's the halachic reality.
Right. 100%. I am trying to say to people, we have this concept in Judaism called shomer negia, right? We know that you don't touch till marriage. I explained that I followed that, and that's how I got married. So I share my own story. And then I say to people, listen, people that are doing that, they know what to do and how to do. Everybody else in the world that isn't trying that, let me introduce you to a way of dating, and let me modify it for you where I think it's going to be difficult, but not impossible. So I could have said just for 3 dates, if you go out and you don't touch and you see what happens. And then after that, Aleeza kind of turns a blind eye and you go about your life the way that you normally do it. Give it a try. 3 dates, though, I think I'm going to call it lightweight. I think it's too light. I actually believe in people more than that. I don't care if you're secular and you're not religious. You can actually hold to 5 dates with no touching. And what I really know is this magical 5-date number. If you get past that, everybody knows you like the other person. 3 dates, not enough buy-in. Because by date 4, now I touched you. Now I'm a little confused. I don't know if I like you because I like how I touched you, or if I like you because I like how you touched my heart. I don't know. But 3 dates is actually not enough for a confirmation. 5 dates, picture this, a guy and a girl, and they're going out, and 5 dates later, he still wants to see you, or she still wants to see you. Everybody knows it's because what's on the inside is good. What's on the outside is pleasing enough. And they're willing to wait for anything else to happen because there's enough there to connect them. 5 dates to me is kind of the magical number of, I know we hit a sweet spot. It's almost like the turning point in religious dating where we're not just dating, but I buy into you. That's the buy-in moment in the secular world. And it's clarity for people. I buy in enough that I'm willing to stick around for 5 dates. I'm willing to schlep or travel or pay for a date or bother to get dressed. It's very magical.
Let me ask a follow-up on that particular issue, because that makes a lot of sense. Have you had situations where you're dealing with non-Orthodox clients and where your Orthodox Jewish beliefs and halachic practice would dictate that they should do a certain thing, but given the situation in which this couple finds itself, they're not religious, they're Jewish, but they're not religious, it might be you'd feel on an almost therapeutic level something else would be required. Does that ever happen, and how do you navigate that?
Yes, 100%. So we're going to stay on this topic because this is actually very interesting, and you might, not you, but you, the audience, the listeners might poo-poo this, but when you understand the thinking, you'll see what happens. So for example, we're talking about 5 dates and not touching. There are people that can't hold to 5. it would be a miracle if they could hold to 3. Okay. Let's say we get them to hold to 3. And let's say they're dating somebody and they actually like the inside a little bit more than they like the outside. Their eyes are not buying in as much, but they are really liking the inside and they haven't physically touched yet. For that type of a couple, it might actually be beneficial that there is some physicality there, because if that physical touch feels good, then that is going to calm their eyes down and it's going to calm their brain down, and they're going to give the relationship even longer to develop. Now, if the physical touch isn't good, it's going to ruin the whole thing. They're going to say, well, I didn't buy in visually as much anyway, so it's going to make it a quick, loss and get out. But it actually has the potential to turn it for the good and let their heart buy in a little bit longer, because somebody, I'm just going to say, gently touched or held them, and nobody did that before. Other people maybe have been, not physically so kind. So there are times where things like that might make a significant difference, where halachically, no, it's completely not in alignment with what anybody would recommend. But if you want to live your best life and you aren't an observant Jew, then you need to know how to do it to the best way possible with some support and guidelines. And why not take Torah wisdom and use as much of it as you can to get you as far as you can, and then incorporate your life as well? Because I don't expect everybody in the world to be Orthodox. I expect everybody in the world to be who they are, and for us to meet them where they're at.
Okay. That can I actually have follow-up questions on this particular topic before we go on to the Talli questions, but I want to follow up on the Scott question. More from a perspective of, obviously there are going to be Orthodox people who are not Shomer Negia, and that might be from like a status, I am not Shomer Negia, or I tried, it was too hard, for whatever reasons. And we do talk about that a lot on our podcast, that, Shomer Negia is cannot replace like conversations about consent, about boundaries. So even when you're dealing with non-Orthodox people or Orthodox people who are not necessarily Shomer Negia, I'm wondering how often you would get into conversations about, bodily autonomy, consent. Is this something that you wanted to happen? I'm sure people will say to you, oh, we hooked up, what might the conversation be that's not necessarily about being Shomer or not being Shomer, but about, was this a experience that came from enthusiastic consent? Because we talk about having these conversations, and we mostly talk to an Orthodox crowd, although we have non-Orthodox listeners and also non-Jewish listeners. But I'm looking at the importance of these conversations that go outside only, Shmirat Yichud and Shmirat Negia as your guidelines for consent and boundaries. Do you get my question?
100%. So first of all, I just want to address, in the Orthodox community, when people, their family, their community is holding by Shomer Negia, but they personally are not, for whatever reason. I tried it, it doesn't work. What I found is that people go from 0 to 100. And because they've never experienced dating in a more secular way where things would progress, you could hold hands, hug or kiss, or take things, as they describe it, first base, second base, third base, with the baseball analogy, to take things slowly over the course of time. Sometimes it's like, well, either there's physical touch or there's not. And so we're either having sex or we're not. And I even have a baseline discussion of breaking Shomer Negia is really as simple as holding somebody's hand, and going all the way is extremely personal. And that's not like, we don't just go from 0 to 100. When you're driving, you have to gear up to get there, and physical consent and emotional consent along the way, and making sure you have a partner who's buying in and at the same place as you is extremely important. And there is an extreme amount of pressure. And I've heard many women tell me, he's not going to stick with me if I don't put out. So I did, because that's what everybody does. And if you don't, he won't stick with you. And I said, actually, the opposite is true, because I talked to the men as well. And they told me, if you say, I have a boundary and I only want to go this far, I don't want to go that far, and then you break your boundary because in the moment something happens more and you don't stop it, because you set a boundary, but you personally don't respect your boundary and you let things go farther, guess what? They actually don't respect you and they'll never marry you. And they said, what? I said, they will never marry you. They said, but if I didn't put out, then they're going to marry me. I said, I don't know if they're serious about you or if they're not serious about you. But what I know is when you break your own personal boundaries, the other person knows you'll never hold me to being a better person. You can't hold yourself to your own standards. You'll never be able to help make me better and hold me to my standards. So you're actually ruining the relationship from the beginning. And it is for sure doomed to fail if you set a boundary and break it. I'd rather you don't even talk about boundaries then. Whatever you feel that you're going to do in the moment, because that's what you're going to say, do. But if you set a line in the sand, you better be firm about it and you better not go past that boundary or you won't respect yourself and they won't respect you. And that's a huge problem. And consent is a different thing along the way because they're also wondering, well, you said this was the boundary. Are you okay? Are you okay? And then you say, yes, yes, yes. And then at the end of the day, you're like, I regret it. I shouldn't have done that. Right? And they're going, but I asked you and you said yes. And you're going, yes, but I didn't really mean it. Okay, well, that's a problem. We have a huge issue here that we can't hold to the boundaries that we set. So I just
so this is great that you're saying that because it really leads me to the next question. But just to kind of comment on, what is the social and psychological backdrop of what you are describing? We've talked a lot about how we don't have sex education that talks about anything in the Orthodox community that talks about anything other than, be shomer or not be shomer. And that leads to this kind of situation where you go into the split place, like I'm disassociated, I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing, so I might as well go all the way. And so then what we have talked about here is that we actually have to have a conversation about healthy sexuality and making choices. In other words, it's actually quite reasonable and understandable that you might want to change your contract because we're human and we actually might want to say, what, I really did want to make my hard stop here, but now I just feel like I really want to do more. You need to take responsibility for that behavior. Responsibility meaning, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this means also birth control if that's part of what you're doing. A lot of people who don't do that from people, they get pregnant, they're just not careful. So now that I brought up this issue of splitting and, just the whole idea that there's going to be a social and cultural backdrop, I think even you said that even amongst I assume you meant your non-Orthodox clients saying, I have to quote unquote put out if I want to keep my man, so to speak. That's a social message that obviously goes against the whole idea of bodily autonomy and consent in the wider world. But there's also the personal psychological part of that, which is I don't have enough, I'm not empowered enough to say no, I'm a people pleaser, I was raised this way or that way. So what I'm going to in the micro, like right now you're very macro, you're on Netflix and but in the micro world, and you do work with people one-on-one, and we saw examples of this, you are going to meet up with people. And we talked about this before we started hit record. I'm not comfortable and you're not comfortable talking about specific characters on your show and what their psychological issues might be. I know that people who go onto Netflix are, taking risk for people talking about them and saying all kinds of things on social media. I don't feel comfortable doing it.
I'm not a therapist and I'm not here to say whether somebody does or doesn't. Actually, people on our show specifically do not have psychological issues because everybody's been through background checks and other checks. So they do have to pass.
We all have psychological issues. We all have. I don't think that there's a binary there that you can, that you can vet a person for either maybe you're talking about like severe.
I just wanted to not make an assumption that if you want to make a generic assumption that we all have psychological issues in the entire world, then we can make that assumption. I just want to make sure that we're not saying that people on the show might have that. I just want to clear that up.
Okay. But, people might look at the show and comment on certain people's behaviors as maybe not being particularly relational and want to understand more about me as a therapist, and other therapists who might watch and other people who might watch might wonder about certain ways in which people show up for dating that are not necessarily relational. And many people were like extremely genuine, and you could see some real connection happening. It was really lovely to see the connection with many of your couples. And then there were like a few cringeworthy moments, which, you know, it's Hollywood. There have to be some cringeworthy moments.
Yeah.
And those moments are like, okay, where I wanted to ask you the question as a matchmaker, but also as a coach, and also you give classes and all that. How do you like move from, okay, I'll get you exactly what you want. You know, you want blonde hair, I'll get you blonde hair. You want this look, I'll get you this look. Or, you know, you want a guy who's always going to pay. Like, there are certain characteristics that you know are not going to get them far because they're not they're not particularly relational. And I would like to know how you deal with it as a coach, and also when do you refer for therapy?
So as a coach, I am constantly navigating what somebody wants with what the values are behind it, not just the superficial things on the list, because we all have those, but the deeper things that they need to get as well. So for me, I keep asking clarifying questions like, okay, great, we've got the physical look. What else is on your list? And they're like, no, that's it. I was like, okay, so I'm going to confirm A, B, C, D. You want those things. If I bring you those things, we're good. They're like, well, I said, more, right? I would always try to draw somebody out to understand them more, to be able to help them understand themselves more, so that we could find a value-based match based on qualities, based on goals, based on personality, based on not triggering somebody's fears, based on not being highly irritated by them. We're doing this all from a place of grounding ourselves in understanding who we are and what will match for us, so that I can help them to become their own best matchmaker, right? They have to matchmake with me in this process. And the way that I do it, which most people don't, most people will tell people when they get a laundry list and they're like, well, that's not going to work. And you shouldn't look for those things. Do you know what you should look for? Let me tell you. Okay. That's what you're going to see. 99% of the world is going to handle relationships like that. And you're going to see that over and over and again online, in movies, in shows, on social media. That's what people do. They point the finger and they go, no, 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 I know better than you. That's not good. I don't find that approach to work. I think that you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And I come in and I go, wow, tell me your list. What do you want? What do you need? Tell me more. Anything else? Right? I want them to do a brain dump, get everything out, share more, tell me more. What else? What else? Make a list. I don't care if it's 4. I've had one woman, she made 4 pages long of a list, double line, double sided, 4 pages of a list with everything that she really wants that came out of her brain. Okay?
And did you find someone for her?
Yeah, she didn't get one thing on the list. He was short and she really wanted a tall guy, but she was really short.
And it's so interesting what you're saying, you know, like I you know, because a lot of times I think that there are matchmakers that would not necessarily say, you know, that's wrong and you're not going to get married that way. They might say, you know,
they do.
I'm sure there are.
I'm in this industry. It's a very, because we hear such outrageous requests that are, it's right. Just, you know, like it's like we're drawing and painting a picture of exactly.
But you're going to see people with clear, you know, relational OCD or rigidity, or maybe they're on the spectrum, and they can be helped. They can be helped. That's what I'm asking. Or do you just
no, people on the spectrum. So we brought on a friendship and relationship coach for people that are on the spectrum. We have Jeremy and Alana Hamburg, and they run a program where they bring people in. They teach them how to have friendships, how to build relationships.
Okay, so you do that.
They have a secular version of the program, and I said to them, we need a frum version because this isn't going to work. Mixing and mingling, not just secular and open to the whole world. I need a Jewish frum version of this program. And they said, great, we're creating it. And now they're a part of my team, and we're bringing this into the world. And if we need therapists, we refer out to therapists. Unless
that's what I'm asking.
But I also have some coaches on my team that are therapists that are also coaches. And then there's some coaches, we're just mentors, we're coaches. I'm I'm one of them. I say, let me tell you what I'm not. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a social worker. I'm not a psychologist. I don't do any of those things. You might hear me talk or sound. You might think I'm somebody who does that. I am not qualified to give you therapy, but I am qualified to do dating and relationship coaching, mentoring, and support, to teach you how to get married, to teach you how to stay married, and to teach you how to build a beautiful relationship that can last a lifetime. That I can do. Oh, you want to deal with this specific problem? I need you to see somebody else for those things. I will not take on anybody that I don't think I can handle. I have taken on, just for example, a client who called me and said, I want your help, I want your services, but I need to be open with you. I was suicidal. I do have my support network, my therapists, and everybody that I go to. I am in an okay place. And if I need help, I have my people, but I need dating expertise. They don't know that. They know how to heal me in the other way. And I'm at a good place. You could even talk to them. Can you help me with dating? So when somebody has a team behind them, my answer is, of course, yes. And if they put us in touch and we can build a relationship, then I know that I can't be somebody's lifeline for something like that. That is not my skill set, and that is not my training.
Okay.
For sure, we bring people in and we make sure they have their right support network.
Thank you for that. That was clear. Scott?
Aleeza, you said before that you are not a therapist and you are not a social worker. You have a very specific role. But one role you did not mention, which is clearly true, and is to your credit, is you are a representative of Torah Judaism. Whether you want that role or not, clearly that is a role that you are taking on, and it has been very, very successful. And particularly, it's especially admirable given the large number of people who are Orthodox who are portrayed negatively in media and in entertainment. It's very refreshing to have a voice of Orthodox Judaism that presents a positive view of Torah Judaism. So first of all, I applaud that. But I want to ask you about something that you said in that context. I remember you said that 15 million Jews in the world, 15 million ways of being Jewish. And a lot of what we've been talking about in this conversation is about the fact that things are not binary. That's something which Talli and I talk about a lot on this podcast, and something which you obviously agree with. At the same time, how do you balance exactly that reality of trying to present Orthodox values publicly, and at the same time allowing people to be themselves and not have that Orthodox Judaism being shoved down their throat in a way that they don't want? In other words, I guess what I'm asking is, when you say 15 million ways of being Jewish, is that a genuine way of thinking about things? Or really, of course, there are 50 million ways, but not everyone's Orthodox. So how do you deal with that?
Okay. That it's a really cute quote, but the truth is there's 15 million Jews and there's about 47 million ways to be Jewish, right? There's not just an equal number 1-to-1, right? You ask, 2 rabbis and you get 10 answers, kind of a thing, right? So there's so many more ways to being Jewish. And I do genuinely believe and love and accept who people are, where they're at. I like to meet people where they're at. And for me, being somebody who's a representative of not just Torah values and Torah Judaism, but I'm going to say of Hashem. I really you're not supposed to make deals with God, but I made a deal with God because we have this fun, playful relationship and we have lots of conversations. I said, listen, I want to represent the Jewish people, and I want to represent you, and I want to bring God into the world, and I want to bring Jewish values and the Jewish people into the world in a really beautiful way. I want to be a light unto the nations, but I need to reach the nations, and I can't do that without national coverage and something really big and important. So if you want to pick me, right? I want to be your soldier. I want to be your commander. I want to be in your army. Pick me, Hashem. I want to do this. I have something important to share. I think I can do it in the right way. If you agree, please join me in this. And I really made this commitment to Hashem to bring Torah, to bring Judaism into the world, but it has to be accessible to the masses, and not just Jews. Non-Jews, anybody in the world. If you listen to this advice, the 5-date challenge and Shomer Negia, it's good for anybody. Anybody can do it. And it's Torah, Jewish, godly wisdom, and I make it accessible to people where they're at. Now, some people can do more and they could try it at a deeper level. Some people can't meet where I'm at and they try it at a little lower level, but I kind of give a middle of the road way of doing it for a majority of the people. And then I tell people, well, you have to adjust to you, right? The same way we adjust volume. Here's the music that's playing, but you can adjust the volume. I need you to adjust the level to see what you can handle.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds very inclusive, and it reminds me, someone actually asked me to ask you this. Do you set up queer couples, LGBT couples?
So I don't personally have experience in that world. I don't personally come from it. I don't know it intimately. I have done my research so that I have a baseline understanding. But what I do have is matchmakers in my network who do work with LGBTQ couples and queer couples, and they are available. And if you want to know my personal philosophy, I don't think that anybody in the world should live without a loving relationship. I've spoken to a rabbi that I'm deeply connected with who feels the same way, that we as human beings, we need love. You know, as a baby, if children don't get love, physical love, if they are not held and they are not loved, they start to go like this and they start to rock on their own. If you've ever seen children who are neglected, okay, we have a self-soothing mechanism. Why? Because love isn't a want. Love is a need. It is like eating. It is like food. It is like oxygen. You cannot live without love. It is not, your body cannot function without it. So I believe that people
Yeah,
need
we're on the same page. We're on the same
I
page.
believe
You
that
know,
people need love, and I don't have, I
yeah.
am not the right person, but I have the right people, and I'm a networker. I'm a matchmaker, so I can matchmake you with the right person to support you.
Okay. I have one more question, and I know that you also do, Scott, too. And I know we're running out of time, but I think our listeners would love to hear a little bit like of a rundown of your best, top 3 tips that you can give people, singles who, just about everyone wants to be able to find their bashert, so to speak. And what do you tell people? I know you said something about date them till you hate them. That's one that I remember. What are your other ones?
The other ones are, well, if you want the catchphrases, we have when in doubt, go out. So if you're like, oh, maybe I'm not sure, just don't think about it. If you have an amount of doubt, if it's not an automatic no, it's just a yes for another date. It's just this is easy processing, so you can get through the dating situation more simply. We have mystery in your history, which is 35% of the people that I work with actually marry somebody either that they have dated or that they know. It could be their friend's brother or sister or somebody from the community or somebody they saw at shul or at the gym or wherever they go and whoever they are. People already know people, so don't look in my little black book. Look in your little black book. We also have dating detox. If you've been burned, if you are stressed out about the dating process, do a detox. I have a whole course and a whole program on it. Of course,
wow. Okay.
Basically anything that any concept that I like that becomes sticky, it becomes a point of information. And so mystery in your history is a course and dating detox is a course. I have something called 40 days of connection. If you're not sure about how to build that connection, take the course and it'll teach you how to build that connection before you ever have somebody in your life. It gives you the skills that you need and the wisdom that you need.
Amazing. Thanks.
And I know, Aleeza, as Talli said, we're running out of time. I know you are, not surprisingly, quite busy these days. But I want to ask you a question that we've dealt with on this podcast about older versus younger singles and what you've experienced in your own coaching, the differences in dealing with older singles versus younger singles, because it is a major issue that people, they've gone out a lot of times, or maybe not, they've been burned. And as they get older, sometimes they become much more reluctant to try things that are new, or maybe not. How do you find that? What's the difference in your own experience between older and younger singles?
And what do you even mean by older? I mean,
that's also a question, but
we have a funny kind of distorted view of what's considered older, I think.
Okay, well, it depends whether
anything
we're
older
about
20, Talli.
Okay.
Yeah.
If we're talking about the Orthodox community or the secular community, it's different. So older in the Orthodox community, depending on how Orthodox you are, starts somewhere between 23 to 25. That becomes the category of when you first get into the older category. If you're in the secular world, it's much closer to 30, 35 when you start to be an older single. In general, I would say that older singles trust themselves more and trust their support network less, meaning you guys didn't help me figure it out before now, or you failed me, or you gave me wrong advice, whether it's a parent, a friend, a coworker, but you didn't help me make it happen till now. I'm not trusting my whole world. I'm going to just go with me because I don't know about you. Other people have the issue of, hey, I don't even trust me. I've never been able to make it happen. It's now been a decade of me dating. Now I've lost faith and trust in myself. I can't hear my gut. I don't know what it's saying. My head, nothing even makes sense. So the biggest issue that I see, no matter what age and no matter what background, is that we lose trust. And losing trust it disables people from making a good decision and doing it easily. So
For sure.
bringing in a coach, bringing in a mentor, bringing in somebody who's experienced specifically with this, rebuilding your trust in yourself. If you don't trust your network, great, let's avoid it, but you need to have a new network. Now let's create it. It's really important. And the biggest thing for older singles is you will find your person. It's in the blueprint of creation. Two people come into this world, the neshamas, the souls. You choose your person, you get married under the chuppah. That's how you make a soulmate. You can do that. You will do that. I've seen everybody do it. Tall and short and fat and skinny and blonde and blue and with physical or mental disabilities. People get married. Lots of people. You will too. Take a breather. It's okay. You will get married. Now, let's date
Okay.
smart. Now
Thank
let's
you
do
for
it.
that. I just want to say one thing to those of you who are listening who have not gotten married. And that, you know, I just want to acknowledge that for people who might be listening. And, you know, our hearts are with you, and halavai, you know, from your lips to God's ears.
Amen.
Aleeza Ben Shalom, this was a lot of fun, and we know your time is valuable. So thank you very much for joining us today on Intimate Judaism.
Thank you.
Thanks.